So in today's tech video, we're going to talk about disc brakes. We're going to talk about three different types. We're going to talk about cable disc, which usually comes on a lot of the e-bikes. We're going to talk about a hybrid version of that, which is a combination of cable and hydraulic. That's what most people convert to using the Zoom HB100 hydraulic brakes. And then we're going to talk about 100% hydraulic. And in this video, I'm going to explain how each one of them works, and I'm going to show you exactly how a hydraulic disc brake works using one taken apart from one of the old vintage Triumph motorcycles that I restore. I'm going to explain how everything works, and hopefully that'll give you a little better understanding of why we use hydraulic brakes and how they work so that you can adjust them. So let's get into it. The first type of brake we're going to talk about is the cable disc brake. There's nothing hydraulic about these at all, but they kind of work on the same principle. Now, I took these off of my Aipas e-bike. These came stock. They're actually very cheap to produce. They don't brake as good as hydraulic brakes. And once you get through this tape, you'll understand why they don't brake that good, okay? So let's talk a little bit about how they work. This is put in here just for a spacer. This would be where your rotor is. This would sit on your bike like so, and your rotor, your wheel rotor, would sit right here and come out around this area here and rotate through. Now, your cable would come through here, and it would actually pull like that. This would be the stationary end of your cable. This would be the end of your cable that pulls. Now, let's look inside and see what actually happens when that cable pulls. You can see your two caliper discs here. And what happens when that cable pulls is one of those caliper discs pushes out, like so. But one thing to notice here is look at the second caliper disc. It doesn't move at all, okay? And I'll explain that in a minute. So this would be your rotor from your bicycle. It would be rotating through here as you're going down the road. And as you apply the brakes, the two discs squeeze against the rotor. That causes friction, which slows your bike down. It also generates a lot of heat, too, and that's something that we need to consider. But as you can see, it kind of pinches that rotor. Okay? Now, as I said, that it's really important to notice that only one side moves out. The second side stays stationary. Okay? That's very important because that's one of the factors that decreases your braking power in this type of brake. Now, these brakes use pads, okay? This is a set of pads, and these are the things, you can see little metal filings in them. That's what also helps give it friction. That's what clamps against your rotor. The discs clamp against your rotor and slow your bike down, okay? And these are what wear out. If you allow these to wear out till it becomes metal to metal, you're going to hear all kinds of grinding noises when you hit your brakes. It's also going to tear up your rotor, and you're going to have to replace that rotor, which could be pretty expensive depending on the type of rotor and bike you have. So these are replaceable parts. You're going to take them out of the caliper here, and you're going to put a new set in. And you'll probably have to do that maybe every 300 to 500 miles. But you should always check these and make sure that you have plenty of pad left on there. Now you notice that they also have a little spring. And what this spring does is this spring keeps them apart. When they release from the brake, it keeps them apart. Otherwise, you'd have one pad staying in there, it would drag, it would go clackety-clack, and make all kinds of noise that you wouldn't want. So that's why we have this spring in there. It's very important that when you're replacing these, that you put the spring in to keep those pads separated. All right. Let's talk about the second type of brake. The second type of brake is a hydraulic brake. Remember that this brake has no hydraulics in it. That is, there is no oil or viscous type fluid in it. It's all mechanical. These are hydraulic brakes. The ones on your bike are going to be very similar, only of course a lot smaller and a lot less heavy duty. So what happens in these is this is a two-part brake, okay? It's going to actually sit on the bike like that, and you can see the slot for your rotor. The rotor on the motorcycle goes in here, okay? It's spinning around and round. You press on the brakes, it pushes oil through these, and these plungers come out from each side, and just like this brake, except both sides work now. It pinches the rotor, okay? And how this works, very interesting, but it's also extremely simple. That's why these are so great. So what happens, this is on a system of your bicycle. Now, if it is a hybrid, that is, if it's like the Zoom brakes, there's only a little bit of oil in a small reservoir in these brakes, okay? There's no oil that goes through the cable or through a tube up to a piston. There's nothing like that. Everything is contained right here. So when you clamp the brakes, it pulls the cable and it pushes a piston and it compresses a very small amount of oil in the brakes. And what happens, you can see on these brakes, when you take them apart, it actually has a channel that feeds the oil from the main side of the brake over to the secondary side of the brake. There's the mating channel right there. So when you compress the brake, oil compresses in both sides. I only have one piston here, but both pistons come out and they squeeze the pads. This would have gigantic pads on it. It squeezes a pad against the rotor and clamps the rotor, and that's what stops. So as you can see with these brakes, this piston would actually fit inside here, like so, and then as oil pushes in, it pushes the piston out, which clamps the brake. And again, this happens on both sides. So that's why it's far more efficient than this style, that, remember, again, it only clamps on one side. This type of hydraulic brake, or the hybrid brake like the Zoom, it will clamp on both sides. And that's what gives you much more braking power in either the hybrid hydraulic brakes or the full hydraulic brakes. Hybrid hydraulic brakes naturally are much simpler because you don't have the tubing going up to a hydraulic reservoir and a plunger that compresses everything up at the handlebars. You can get those. They're a lot more expensive. The hybrid type Zoom brakes are a lot easier to install. And one thing that I will caution you about with the full hydraulic brakes on an e-bike is that you must have the electric cutout, the safety cutout for the motor on the handlebar that's integral to the brake lever, so that when you pull the brake lever, it automatically disconnects your electric motor and you can stop. Because if you don't have that, the motor will continue going and you're probably not going to brake and you're probably going to crash. It's going to end up bad. So anyway, that's a quick and dirty explanation of the types of brakes and how a hydraulic brake works. And I hope that gives you a little bit better understanding of why we do want to put hydraulic brakes on a bike, because it gives us much more power when we're braking versus the old mechanical clamp brake where you really have to torque down on it to get it to stop. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave comments and questions below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any other ideas or suggestions for future tech videos about these bikes, leave them in the comment and I'll try and put one out there for you. Again, thanks a lot for supporting our channel, and thanks a lot for watching. Be safe out there, and we'll see you. Out.